Let's pray in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Come, Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of your faithful, and enkindle in them the fire of your love. Send forth your Spirit, and they shall be created, and you shall renew the face of the earth. Let us pray, O God, who by the light of the Holy Spirit did instruct the hearts of the faithful, grant that by that same Spirit we may be truly wise and ever enjoy his consolations. Through the same Christ our Lord. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Our Lady, seat of wisdom, Saint Joseph, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. We spoke last night, as I mentioned, about hell, but we ended with a discussion of purgatory and the way in which, when you and I face the light of the truth, we begin this process of conversion and conformity that can be just a little bit daunting. The closer you begin to get to a light, it emits more clarity. And we see ourselves relative to the divine with greater perfection. And that can be rather frightening, to the point where you hear some saints say things that you must find rather daunting. Saints that perhaps you love, that will say with absolute conviction that they are the greatest of sinners. You ever read a saint say that? And you think to yourself, may as well stop now. I ain't making it. But you know how it is when you get closer to a light. Ever get close to a mirror, especially one of those mirrors that, sorry women, but I think some of you, I've never used one myself, but the ones that are really, really powerful, and you're looking for all those small areas of your face, that's frightening. I don't want to see that. I don't want to look in that place. Especially with the lights on. But the closer I get to it, the more imperfections, of course, I see. But that shouldn't daunt us either, because the fact of the matter is, it's not just light that we experience when we draw close and closer and closer to God, but it's also heat. That is to say, divine love. We shouldn't be afraid. Let me give you one story about that. About 10 years ago, I was giving a parish mission in Denver, Colorado. And at the end of the mission, I had a wonderful old nun who had come to each one of the talks and all the adorations. She was always in the church. And I thought, this is an exemplary sister. And she came up and said, Father, can I speak with you at the end? I said, of course, sister. Thank you for coming. And she was very old. And she says, now sit down. I got something to tell you, and it ain't going to be easy for me, because I've never told me. But I'm going to tell you because I think God told me to, and because I think you'll be able to use it. And she said that she grew up in a home in which there was abuse by her relatives, eventually divorce, all kinds of chaos and sin. And so at a very young age, she learned to cope by doing what lots of people do to learn to cope. And she found herself in one bad relationship after another at a very early age. Drinking, drug use, all sorts of promiscuity, you name it. Somehow, she finds herself at the door of a convent after a number of those escapades. And even more wondrous is that they let her in. She didn't tell the truth about herself. And back then, as we're finding out now, the sifting wasn't always as good. One of the reasons we have so many good vocations right now is because the doorkeeper for the last 17 years has been your pastor. And he's very risk averse, which is good. But she got in. But just because she put a veil on didn't mean that she was sanctified, as you know well. On the contrary, you bring your nature everywhere you go. Have you ever gone on a trip thinking it's going to change your problems? And you get there and you find out, oh, it's still me. She got in, she puts the veil on, and it's not that God wasn't giving her grace, but there was so much to overcome that she needed help with. And she gave up, and she began to do the same thing she did in life in the convent, but now as a nun. You can imagine the kind of hell that she brought on herself and on the community. And eventually she got caught. And the superior somehow, instead of kicking her out, sent her on a retreat. And on the retreat, where their convent, close to where their convent was, she had access to a beach. And she was walking along the beach, wondering what she was going to do with the rest of her life, whether she could stay, what's so wrong with her, why can't she get healed, etc. And she sees a little fishmonger's hut, a little shack. She's curious. She walks over there and sees that the door is ajar. And she pauses when she tells me the story. She says, "You're not going to believe me, but you should. I got no reason to lie to you. I've been a nun for however many years, and I'm going to die. It's true. And I'm not fanciful either." She opened the door, and she saw seated there the Son of God. And I said, "What did you do?" She says, "I asked him the same question. What are you doing?" Can you imagine? She was shocked, but she didn't run away. She looked at the Son of God and said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "I want to show you something. I want to show you what I'm working on." And I said, "Didn't you get scared or wildly excited or anything?" It was the strangest thing. I didn't get any of it. It was as if I was talking to anyone. And I was even rude to him. And he shows her what he was working on, which was a little sculpture. And he was fashioning this sculpture out of clay. And he said, "What do you think?" And she looked at it, and it was hideous. Absolutely hideous, she said. It was the worst attempt at a sculpture she had ever seen. It wasn't just bad, it was perfectly ugly. And everything about it was wrong, distorted, disproportionate, lacking in all harmony and clarity. It was horrible, grotesque. And she told him so. And she said, "I would think that you would be better as an artist." And he looked at her and he said, "Well, this isn't what I did. This is what you did." And all of a sudden, the reverberations, of course, of the truth hit her hard. And if he just left her there, I would have doubted the story. I really would have doubted the story. Because of the very thing you mentioned, or I mentioned to you the other day, about the difference between the advocate and the accuser. Your sins are only ever revealed to you for the purpose of getting rid of them. Not to simply accuse you. And she said that he reaches over to the window, which had a shutter on it. And he slowly opened the window, and this light fell on his sculpture. And as it did, all the shadows which made the thing look so incredibly grotesque, of course, went away. And she said, "I was staring at the most beautiful thing I had ever seen in my life. This woman that I beheld in this sculpture was gorgeous, so attractive. I couldn't believe how beautiful she was." And he just said, "This is what I do." And then it was over. And she knew that what she had seen was her, but not as she was. And the difference was simply the light. I never forgot that, obviously. Who does? A story like that. And I said, what did you do afterwards? She said, I have lived the rest of my life that image is burned in my head. And every day I go before the Lord and I say, am I getting closer? Because I look in the mirror and I'm getting uglier. But she wasn't getting uglier. She was a beautiful soul. And I don't know whether or not she would have some purgatorial time to work on that light more. But what I do know is that what I encountered as an old nun, and she has gone to God now, she was beautiful. Really beautiful. But that's the process. And as C.S. Lewis once said, if we saw ourselves glorified, we'd be sorely tempted to worship ourselves, because that's what he creates. So why doesn't he tell us about heaven? Why doesn't he even show us a little bit about heaven? Why does he keep it such a secret that we have to say stupid things like 19th green or Hartley Hog in heaven or whatever the thing is? Why doesn't he just attract us? Because he can. How many times did our Lord say to the apostles, I have much more to tell you, but I can't tell you, because you would not understand it. How is that the case? Let me give you another analogy. Maybe you've heard this one before. Let's just suppose, for the sake of argument, you are in your mother's womb, but you happen to be conscious. One of the nice things about being a baby is that you're just sort of floating around, kind of on your back. You're getting fed every day, nice and warm in there. Sometimes you get jostled around. Sometimes your mother eats something too spicy, whatever. But for the most part, it's a pretty good game. It's your home, and it's the only home you know. And imagine if you were conscious, and someone got a message to you saying, you're going to have to move. And you're like, no, this is where I live, right? This is where I live. I got rights. But then you get a little bit too big for it. Then you get a message again. Actually, the moving date has been moved up. And you were to say, well, where am I going? And the answer is, outside. What's outside? Light. Light is outside. What's light? Oh, it's beautiful. You'll love it. It's a bit colder. You're going to cry at first. But it's beautiful out there. What's beauty? Well, out there, you're going to grow. You're going to get really big. And you're going to run and jump and skip and dance and sing. You're going to climb a tree. What's a tree? What would you possibly be able to comprehend? And my point, of course, is that you've never seen a tree as it is in the mind of God, perfectly. You've always lived in a fallen world, as have I. You've never seen a perfect sunset, as many sunsets as you've seen, and they're amazing. You've never seen anything in the way in which it will be. How could he explain it to you any more than explaining it to a child in the womb? You're not ready for that. You wouldn't understand it, and neither would I. And that begins to get at the point of St. Paul when he says, eye has not seen, ear has not heard, what God has prepared for those who love him. And think about that for a second. For those who love him. What would you do if you were all-powerful and you could create whatever you want? What would you do if you were able to say to someone, I'm going away, and I'm going to prepare a place for you. You know exactly what you do with those you love. Those of you who are parents and whose children have moved away, what do you do, assuming the relationship is pretty good, what do you do when they come home? Like my mother has got 1,000 things she tries to do to entice me to come home. Right? My bed is all made nicely. She makes some fresh hummus. Right? House looks great. I mean, it's just because she's excited that I'm coming home. It's just the nature of love. To prepare something for someone. What do you do? Or what would you do if you were God? We'll get to that at the end. But when you get there, C.S. Lewis says, you're actually going to find your first love. It's not going to be a foreign place to you. As a matter of fact, as St. Paul says, your citizenship is in heaven. You've actually never been home. You've never been home. That's why you don't quite feel at home. Do you know what the word nostalgia means? Anyone? Any Greek speakers here? It's a Greek word. It just means homesickness. Isn't that beautiful? When you have nostalgia for something, it just means homesickness. If you've ever traveled for a long period of time and away from the place you're most familiar, but not just the place, the persons with whom you are at home, you have homesickness. Now let me ask you this. Is heaven a place? Come on, let's see some heads move. Someone be bold. Absolutely it is. Why do I know that? Because you have a body. Heaven is for persons with bodies. You're not going to become an angel, remember that? It actually is real. And it's the most real. But, is that the most important thing about heaven? On the contrary. Because if I said that you have homesickness, what would it be like if you longed to get back to Winston-Salem because that's your home, but everyone that you loved was somewhere else? How much would you like Winston-Salem? Think about the place in the world that you love the most. For me, it's the Dolomites in Italy. I think it's the perfect blend of German efficiency and Italian dolce vita. Right? It's like, it's things actually work unlike the rest of Italy. And the food is good. It's perfect. And the Dolomites is incredible mountains with these carpeted green landscapes and fun costumery and chapels everywhere. It's perfect for me. But I would never want to be there by myself. If I went there, what's the very first thing I would do if I saw an incredible landscape? You gotta see this. Because persons don't dwell in places. Simply. We do because we have bodies. But persons live in persons. Right? I have a mind with which to know, and a heart with which to love. To know and to be known, to love and to be loved. Because we're in the image of God. I have to be in a locus, and my knowing and my loving needs a locus. Because if you never see one of your friends, yes, you can pick up where you left off, maybe, if the person hasn't changed and you haven't changed, but it's not a consistent friendship. You have to have contact. You need your bodies, you need a locus, but you need more than that. And heaven is going to be both. It's going to be both. So don't think about it as a big white space. How many people are attracted by a big white space? Where you're kind of in a big white cloud, you're wearing white clothing, and you're strumming a harp, and you're just staring at God, the beatific vision. Yeah, I got it. Hey, Gopher, you see that? Yeah, I see, partner. What do you want to do? Keep staring? That's what we're supposed to do. Of course you're not attracted to that. But you got to clean out the mind from these silly thoughts. It's not going to be less than you already experienced when you love something. Ever have that moment where you're with the exact persons that you love, doing the exact thing that you love, and it just happens to be a perfect day too? What do? How do I hold this? How do I capture this? Because it slips through your fingers with time. I can't hold anything. I can't even hold the sunset. Even if I'm terribly attracted to it, you see it, no, don't. It's gone. It slips through our fingers. I can't keep anything. When the Lord does say to us what heaven is, what does he say? He uses all kinds of images of things that we love. The principal one is, the one he uses the most often to talk about heaven is a wedding. Exactly. Why? Because everyone's happy at a wedding, at least for a moment. Even the ones who are the most... I thought I slipped that one by. Everyone's happy at a wedding for a moment because it's almost nostalgia. You are a citizen of heaven, you've never been there. There's something about a wedding that makes us almost remember home that we've never been to. It's like the very beginning of Genesis. What happens in the beginning of Genesis? When the man is put to sleep and a woman is created out of his side, and God the Father walks her down an aisle to the man. And the man turns around and is like, oh, at last. And the father gives his daughter away. Everyone in the church, at least for 5 seconds, even the worst cynics in love think, it's possible. Then there's the rest of life, which is different. But doesn't negate that point, because that is something about the divine. We use images. St. John uses images of the island of Patmos. All kinds of jewels on the street and gold and the Lamb who is the lamp of everyone giving them life. Because you have to talk about something that you know. We always move when we understand anything from what is more familiar to what is less familiar. And so he has to use images that we comprehend. But the only time that Jesus says, this is heaven, is when? Testing your biblical knowledge. I'll give you a hint. His actual words are, and this is eternal life. Play the Jeopardy music. Kind of important, right? If you want to know what's on the other side, one time he says it. This is eternal life. To know you, Father, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent. And we miss it because it doesn't have all those exciting things about it. Not the same as a wedding or amazing angels flying around or incredible streets paved with gold or whatever the images that are used are. It's knowledge. Okay. You're going to have to bear with me for just a few seconds. We've got to do just a touch of what we call epistemology. How do we know anything? And then we're going to get into how we could possibly know God. Okay? So, thinking caps for the last time tonight. Every time you know anything, you take it in with your body, right? Matter is hitting you. Right now, matter is hitting you through speakers, through your eyesight, all these different things, through the fact that your back is starting to hurt on that hard bench. Like everything is hitting you, hitting your body. And your mind, or your brain, I should say, your brain collates all that and gives you what we call a phantasm. A phantasm. You've got this thing in your mind. So let's assume that there's a cat sitting right here. What's the first thing you think about when you think about a cat? Father Gober? Satan. Father Gober hates cats, if you didn't know. That explains it, someone said. You know why? Because you heard the joke, right? Because a dog, the reason we love dogs is because they say it's good that you exist every time you come home, right? They love you. A cat could care less, right? A dog looks at you and says, oh, he feeds me. He gives me drink. He gives me a place to sleep. He must be God. And a cat says, oh, he feeds me. He gives me to drink. He gives me a place to lie on. I must be God. I'll saunter over here now. So you see a cat. Your brain takes all those different ways in which you're collating matter and gives you a phantasm. But that's matter and no meaning. Even animals have an estimative sense by which a sheep knows a wolf, but not as a wolf. A dog knows its mother to get milk, but it doesn't celebrate Mother's Day. Why not? Because it doesn't know a universal. And so if I say the word cat, you understand. If I had to be referring with a word to the exact cat that you know or that you have in your mind, because the moment you think about a cat, you make an image. And that puts it back into matter. No longer a universal. Universals don't have matter. Particulars do. Cat and your cat. And your cat, and your cat, and your cat. And all of them can be part of this thing called cat, universal concept. It's what makes us allowed to have language, right? You cannot have a concept of God. Not only because you've never encountered him materially because he doesn't have a body, but you couldn't in any way, shape, or form. Whatever concept you have of God is deficient. Why? Because he's infinite and you are finite. If you generate a concept, the concept is by definition, limited. And he's not. St. Thomas's description of God is ipsum esse persist subsistens. Being himself, by himself subsisting. I love you like that, God. You can't. You can't know him by your own concept. And you can't see him who has no body. So how are you going to know him? If heaven is to know him as he is, and I believe that, scriptures say, you will see me as I am. With what? This? I can't. This doesn't. It just picks up matter. So what we do in abstracting from a particular catness is called the light of reason. God gave you and I a great light called the light of reason, which you and I do because we've been baptized. We also have the light of faith. Faith isn't just darkness. It's true, I don't see with my eyes, but it's not just darkness. It's God's self-knowledge placed into our feeble minds. It's his own self-knowledge placed into our feeble minds. And it does mean that it's inchoate, right? It's not complete. It's just beginning. It's like trying to look at someone coming way across the field and not knowing if it's Tom or Sally. Well, if you call out, hey, Tom, and it's Sally, you're going to offend her. But you can't see enough. It's too far away. It's seen dimly as in a mirror, St. Paul says. But it's real knowledge. It's eternity begun. Faith is eternal life begun because you have his self-knowledge. And you cannot love what you do not know. Tell me something you love that you don't know. It's impossible. And faith is given to us some inchoate knowledge of him to begin the process of loving him. That's divine charity. But what's going to happen on the other side is wild. You ready? Not just the light of reason, by which I abstract universal from a particular. Not just the light of faith, by which he puts in me his own self-knowledge in a inchoate way in my feeble mind. But he's going to take up the space of my mind. I'm not going to generate a concept. He's going to generate himself in me, in my intellect. And we call that the light of glory, in which you can't not see him, any which way you look. You can still look down at a particular, and a thing or person, but you cannot not see him. We call that the Beatific vision. St. Thomas says, we will see him totum sed non totaliter, which means I see all of them, and yet, not totally. What he means by that is this: he's infinite. And so while you will see him as he is, you will never get bored, because he's infinite. It is an ocean in which you can plumb the depths for all eternity. You will never, ever get bored. And any good you ever knew on this earth, even the person you love the most, whatever good they possess is already in him perfectly. He has that perfectly. And you're going to discover that too. Everything you've ever loved, St. Augustine says. I threw myself into the world because it was beautiful and I loved it, but I couldn't have loved it if you weren't there. Because the only goodness that it has is because it's a reflection of you, and you have it perfectly. Which means you're not going to miss anything or anyone. Doesn't mean you won't have relationships with other people. You will. But you couldn't miss anything. You will not have homesickness because you will be home. The one for whom you were made. And you can't lose him. You won't be trying to hold on as he slips through your fingers. You'll just go further up, as C.S. Lewis says, further up and further in. Further up and further in. You will not be bored. See that? No. There'll be none of that. Now, I did mention that we still have bodies, right? So what about your body? Is it just along for the ride? Remember in the Transfiguration of our Lord, what did the apostles see? Who were the apostles that saw it? Peter, James, and John, right? Okay? What did they see? Did they see God? No. What did they see? A big light bulb? What's that? Okay, so why was he illuminated from within? What was this thing that St. Peter saw that made him forget about absolutely everything else and everyone else? Peter didn't say, hey, I got a bucket list to go do. Hold my beer, watch this. He didn't say that. He said what? I'm going to build 3 booths. One for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. I don't need one. I'll stand here in the rain, in the snow, in the sun, forever, and look at this. At the end of his life, St. Peter wrote a letter, and he didn't refer to the crucifixion, nor the resurrection, nor anything else. All he said, as if it's still burned in his memory as the thing he loves more than anything else, I saw him on that mountain. I saw him. It's him. And he just loved what he saw. But all that was Christ's humanity glorified. That wasn't even his divinity. And when I say glorified, St. Thomas says that when we have the beatific vision, the vision of what you see in your intellect of God begins to sort of overflow, like overflowing the banks into your body. And it suffuses your flesh. That it just has clarity. Splendor. And so he calls the Transfiguration the cessation of a perpetual miracle. And what that means is that Christ always holds that dam, that water, that glory at bay, because he wanted to be like us in all things but sin. And so he can't walk around like that because everyone followed his feet. He holds back the glory, but right at that moment, he lets it down. And he shows just 3 persons of what it is to be a glorified man. Not even God. And your body's going to get this too. And so St. Thomas lists 4 things that your body's going to have. And they're based upon the Transfiguration, but also based upon what we see Jesus do after his resurrection. And what we see our Blessed Mother do when she appears, because she has a body. And what are those things? The first one is impassibility. You can't suffer. You will no longer have a body that is capable of corruption. Impassibility. The second one is what's called subtlety. And what that means is, right now, your soul is acting on your body, right? Making all your parts work for the whole. It gives it life, but it can't really control it very well. I can't even control my digestion. All kinds of things going on in me, systems going on in me, no idea what's going on, right? A whole lot of people working inside, and I don't have any control. But what if you could? What if your soul actually could take all that matter and do with it as it would? Organize it as it would. How could Christ sleep on the front of the boat when the waves are crashing on him? How's it possible? Because he has perfect control over his matter. It's called subtlety. And the way we see this is the fact that he can show up to the apostles on the road to Emmaus and they can't recognize him until he chooses. His matter takes a different form. He shows up to Mary Magdalene and she thinks he's what? A gardener. Shows up on the Sea of Tiberias, they have no idea who it is who's calling them children. And Our Lady does this too. She shows up in Tepeyac as La Morena, right? A little brown woman, it says. Beautiful description, and she's gorgeous, right? This beautiful woman that says to Juan Diego, "Do you not know that I am your mother?" What would that look like if she looked like an Irish woman? Right? She actually shows up as La Morena. Why is that important? Because she really is his mother. She is metaphysically, ontologically, his mother in the order of grace. And her flesh manifests that. She's not play acting, it's not a mask. Her soul has complete control over her matter in glorified state. Such that she could appear later in Fatima, as a Portuguese woman, in Lourdes, as a young French woman peasant. But always beautiful. Ever notice that? She can't lie about that. Subtlety. And lastly, of course, agility. Just like angels, you are where you think. You can go where you wish to go by virtue of where you act. That's going to be fun. Very fast. And lastly, clarity. That beauty that we saw coming forth from the body of Christ. Okay. We'll close with this. We mentioned, what would you do if you were God and you were preparing something for someone that you loved? And you also happen to be all-powerful. And you also happen to be the one who created your human nature. So even more than you knows exactly what you love and what you should love and what you will love when you're perfected. What would you create? I'll read you this text. The text is talking about what God, looking at the saints, and then what he says. "Oh, the Lord cannot forget that the saints, when they once lived on earth, paid homage to him by the total donation of their repose, the donation of their happiness, and then their whole being. That they would have liked to have had an inexhaustible flow of blood in their veins, in order to shed it as a living and imperishable pledge of their faith. That they would have desired 1,000 hearts in their breasts, so as to consume them in the unquenchable fires of their love, and to possess 1,000 bodies, in order that they might deliver them each to martyrdom, like victims unceasingly renewed in a divine disposal of self." That's what they wish. And when God sees them give themselves to him, and they die, in that brief instant between their death and his reward, God says to himself, now it's my turn. Now it's my turn to give to you. What will he do? And so, do not ever think for a second that heaven is anything less than the perfect intoxication of everything you could ever possibly love. Prepare yourselves well for it, because in just a little while, it will be eternity. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.